Imagine waking up one day and realizing that your greatest gift, your ability to see patterns others miss, to understand the deeper currents of human nature, to glimpse the intricate web of connections that bind reality together, is also your greatest curse. You possess a mind that functions like a sophisticated radar system, constantly scanning for meaning in a world that seems increasingly devoid of it. You're the person who notices this subtle shift in someone's voice that reveals their hidden pain, who can predict the collapse of relationships months before they crumble, who sees through the thin veneer of social pleasantries to the raw truth beneath. But here's the paradox that haunts your existence. The very intuition that makes you extraordinary also makes you exquisitely vulnerable to a kind of suffering that most people will never comprehend. You're trapped in a cruel irony, blessed with the ability to understand everything, yet condemned to feel misunderstood by everyone. Picture yourself in a crowded room, surrounded by laughter and conversation, yet feeling more isolated than if you were standing alone on a desolate mountaintop. The people around you seem to glide effortlessly through life, content with surface-level interactions, satisfied with small talk about weather and weekend plans. Meanwhile, your mind operates like a deep-sea explorer, constantly diving beneath the surface, searching for the profound truths that others seem perfectly happy to ignore. You've learned to wear masks, not because you're deceptive, but because your authentic self is too intense, too complex, too overwhelming for most people to handle. You've discovered that when you share your deepest insights, when you reveal the patterns you see in human behavior or the connections you've made between seemingly unrelated events, you're often met with blank stares, uncomfortable silence, or worse, the patronizing smile that says, "You're overthinking again." This is the burden of being an intuitive introvert, specifically those rare individuals who fall into the INFJ and INTJ personality types. You represent less than 4% of the population, yet you carry a disproportionate weight of the world's emotional and intellectual complexity. You're the architects of understanding in a world that seems increasingly satisfied with ignorance, the guardians of depth in an age of superficiality. But why does this gift feel so much like a punishment? Why do you find yourself lying awake at 3 a.m., your mind racing with thoughts too complex to share, too profound to dismiss? Why does every social interaction feel like a performance? Every relationship like a careful balance between revealing too much and sharing too little? The answer lies in a fundamental mismatch between how you process reality and how the world expects you to function. You're operating with the emotional sensitivity of a seismograph in a world that treats feelings like background noise. You're equipped with the intellectual curiosity of a philosopher in a society that rewards quick answers over deep questions. You're wired for authentic connection in a culture that mistakes networking for intimacy. Consider this. While others see a simple conversation, you perceive layers of subtext, hidden motivations, and unspoken truths. While others experience emotions as temporary states to be managed or ignored, you feel them as profound messages about the nature of existence itself. While others view relationships as sources of entertainment or mutual benefit, you see them as sacred opportunities for soul-deep connection and understanding. This isn't just about being different. It's about being fundamentally incompatible with the operating system of modern society. You're like a sophisticated piece of software trying to run on outdated hardware, constantly crashing, constantly buffering, constantly struggling to find enough processing power to handle the complexity of your inner world. The most heartbreaking part? You've probably spent years believing that something was wrong with you. You've wondered why you can't just be happy with simple pleasures, why you need everything to have meaning, why you feel so deeply moved by beauty, injustice, and the mysterious interconnectedness of all things. You've questioned whether your intensity is a flaw, whether your need for solitude is selfishness, whether your ability to see through people's facades is a gift or a curse. But what if the problem isn't with you at all? What if your suffering isn't a sign of weakness, but rather the inevitable result of sensitive soul trying to survive in a world that has forgotten how to honor depth, complexity, and authentic human connection. The question that will haunt you until you find the answer is this: how do you preserve the very sensitivity that makes you extraordinary while learning to navigate a world that seems designed to crush it? The root of your suffering lies in a psychological phenomenon that Carl Jung identified nearly a century ago, yet one that modern society seems determined to ignore: the fundamental tension between the individual's authentic nature and the collective's demand for conformity. Jung called this the conflict between the persona, the mask we wear to function in society, and the shadow, the authentic self we're forced to hide. But for you, this conflict isn't merely uncomfortable, it's existentially devastating. Unlike the majority of people who can slip comfortably into their personas without feeling like they're betraying their souls, you experience this split as a form of psychological violence. Every time you simplify your thoughts for easier consumption, every time you smile politely while your mind screams with unspoken truths, you're committing a small act of self-destruction. Friedrich Nietzsche understood this torment when he wrote about the higher men, those individuals whose consciousness had evolved beyond the comfort of collective thinking. He recognized that with greater awareness comes greater suffering, that the price of seeing clearly is the loss of the blissful ignorance that makes ordinary life bearable. You are living proof of Nietzsche's observation that the tree that would grow high must send its roots deep into the darkness. Your intuitive function operates like a sophisticated early warning system, constantly processing information that others miss entirely. While extroverted sensors live comfortably in the present moment, absorbed by immediate sensory experiences, your mind is perpetually scanning for patterns, connections, and deeper meanings. This isn't a choice, it's your neurological design. Brain imaging studies have shown that introverts have higher baseline activity in their prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for internal processing, planning, and meaning-making. Arthur Schopenhauer, himself likely an intuitive introvert, captured this predicament perfectly when he described the hedgehog's dilemma, the challenge of getting close enough to others for warmth without being hurt by their spines. But your version is more complex. You need not just warmth, but understanding, not just companionship, but intellectual and emotional resonance. You're seeking souls who can match your depth, yet you're surrounded by people who mistake your complexity for complication. The psychological roots of your suffering extend even deeper into what Viktor Frankl called the existential vacuum, the emptiness that emerges when life lacks meaning. While others can distract themselves with entertainment, consumption, or social climbing, you're constitutionally incapable of finding fulfillment in anything that doesn't align with your deeper sense of purpose. You're cursed with an internal compass that points always toward meaning, even when following that direction leads you through treacherous terrain. Jean-Paul Sartre's concept of bad faith takes on particular relevance for your experience. Sartre argued that we suffer when we deny our fundamental freedom to choose our authentic existence. But for you, the choice between authenticity and social acceptance feels like choosing between psychological integrity and basic human connection. You're forced to live in a constant state of what Sartre would call anguish, the weight of making choices that define not just your actions, but your very being. Your suffering is amplified by what psychologists call cognitive dissonance, the mental discomfort of holding contradictory beliefs or values. You believe deeply in human potential, yet you're confronted daily with evidence of humanity's capacity for superficiality, cruelty, and willful ignorance. You value authenticity above all else, yet you're forced to perform social roles that feel fundamentally dishonest. You crave deep connection, yet you're surrounded by people who seem satisfied with relationships that barely scratch the surface. The neurological basis for your heightened sensitivity adds another layer to your struggle. Research has shown that highly sensitive individuals, a category that includes most intuitive introverts, have more active mirror neurons, making them more susceptible to absorbing others' emotions and stress. You're literally wired to feel more deeply, to process more information, to be affected more profoundly by your environment than the average person. But perhaps the most insidious aspect of your suffering comes from what Aldous Huxley called the doors of perception, the filters through which we interpret reality. Your doors are wide open, allowing you to perceive subtleties and complexities that others miss, but also exposing you to overwhelming amounts of information and stimulation. You're like someone with superhuman hearing forced to live in a world of constant noise, unable to turn down the volume on your own awareness. The philosophical implications are staggering. You're living proof that consciousness itself might be a burden, that the evolution of human awareness has created beings capable of suffering in ways that simpler creatures never could. You embody what some philosophers call the curse of self-awareness, the recognition that with greater consciousness comes greater capacity for both insight and anguish. Society compounds your suffering by treating your natural traits as problems to be solved rather than gifts to be honored. You're told you're too sensitive, too intense, too complicated. You're encouraged to lighten up, to not take things so seriously, to just be happy. These well-meaning suggestions feel like someone telling a poet to stop seeing metaphors or asking a musician to stop hearing harmonies. The result is a profound sense of alienation, not just from others, but from a world that seems designed for a different kind of human being altogether. You're an exile in your own species, carrying wisdom that few want to hear, offering depth that few can appreciate, seeking connection that few can provide. The consequences of living as an intuitive introvert in an extroverted, sensor-dominant world extend far beyond mere social discomfort. They reshape the very architecture of your existence in ways so subtle and pervasive that you might not even recognize them as consequences at all. These effects operate like a slow-acting poison, gradually altering your relationship with yourself, others, and reality itself. Consider how your brain has learned to function under constant threat. Neuroscientists have discovered that chronic overstimulation, something you experience daily in a world designed for different nervous systems, triggers a persistent state of hypervigilance. Your amygdala, the brain's alarm system, becomes oversensitive, interpreting normal social situations as potential dangers. This isn't paranoia. It's your nervous system's rational response to an environment that consistently overwhelms your processing capacity. The result is what psychologists call allostatic load, the wear and tear your body experiences from chronic stress. While others can attend parties, meetings, or social gatherings and feel energized, you return home feeling as though you've run a marathon. Your adrenal glands work overtime, pumping out cortisol and adrenaline to help you navigate social situations that feel like psychological minefields. Over time, this constant state of activation leads to what researchers call introvert burnout, a form of exhaustion that sleep alone cannot cure. But the physical toll is only the beginning. Your cognitive architecture has been fundamentally altered by years of operating in survival mode. The confirmation bias, your brain's tendency to seek information that confirms existing beliefs, becomes weaponized against you. You begin to notice every instance of misunderstanding, every moment of social rejection, every sign that you don't belong. Your pattern recognition abilities, usually your greatest asset, become turned inward, creating a feedback loop of negative self-perception. The impact on your relationships is perhaps the most heartbreaking consequence. You've learned to practice what psychologists call emotional labor, the exhausting work of managing not just your own feelings, but anticipating and accommodating everyone else's. You become the family translator, the friend who always knows what to say, the colleague who can read between the lines. But this gift comes with a cruel irony. The better you become at understanding others, the more isolated you feel when they fail to understand you. Your romantic relationships suffer from what researchers call the intimacy paradox. You crave deep connection more than most people, yet your complexity makes you harder to know. Partners often fall in love with your depth, then feel overwhelmed by your intensity. They're drawn to your ability to see their souls, then frightened by your capacity to see their flaws. You find yourself in a perpetual dance of revelation and concealment, sharing enough to feel connected, but not so much that you become too much to handle. The professional world presents its own unique set of consequences. Your need for meaningful work isn't just a preference, it's a psychological necessity. While others can find satisfaction in routine tasks or external rewards, you require work that aligns with your values and allows you to use your gifts. This makes you vulnerable to what Viktor Frankl called noodynamics, the motivation that comes from meaning rather than pleasure or power. In a world that often reduces work to mere economic transaction, you're driven by forces that most people don't understand and many employers don't value. Your decision-making process becomes corrupted by what psychologists call analysis paralysis. Your ability to see multiple perspectives and potential outcomes, usually a strength, becomes a weakness when you're forced to make quick decisions in a fast-paced world. You see the complexity that others miss, which makes you more accurate in your assessments but slower in your responses. This creates a vicious cycle. You're criticized for being indecisive, which makes you second-guess your natural process, which makes you even more paralyzed. The most insidious consequence might be the gradual erosion of your authentic self. Years of having your natural responses judged as too much or too intense teach you to self-censor, to edit your thoughts before speaking, to carefully calibrate your emotional expressions. You develop what psychologists call masking, the exhausting practice of presenting a more socially acceptable version of yourself. This masking creates a split between your inner and outer worlds that grows wider over time. You become an expert at reading social cues, at knowing what others want to hear, at performing the role of the person they can handle. But with each performance, you move further away from your authentic self, creating what Carl Jung called a complexio oppositorum, a tension of opposites that threatens to tear you apart. The technological age has amplified these consequences exponentially. Social media, with its emphasis on quick reactions and surface-level engagement, feels like a foreign language to you. The constant stream of information overwhelms your already overactive nervous system. The pressure to maintain an online presence conflicts with your need for privacy and depth. You're forced to reduce your complex thoughts to bite-sized posts, to compress your nuanced perspectives into shareable content. Perhaps most tragically, you begin to doubt your own perceptions. Years of being told you're too sensitive or overthinking create what psychologists call gaslighting syndrome. You start to question your own reality. Your intuitive insights, which are usually remarkably accurate, become sources of self-doubt rather than confidence. You second-guess your ability to read people, to understand situations, to trust your own judgment. The cumulative effect of these consequences is a form of what existentialist philosophers call authentic suffering, pain that emerges not from external circumstances, but from the fundamental conflict between who you are and who the world expects you to be. You're trapped in a prison of your own consciousness, surrounded by people who can't see the bars. The moment of rebellion begins with a radical recognition. Everything you've been taught about fitting in, about being normal, about managing your intensity, it's all been a lie designed to diminish your power. The very traits that society has conditioned you to see as weaknesses are actually your greatest evolutionary advantages. Your rebellion isn't against other people. It's against the internal colonization that has convinced you to betray your own nature. Consider the story of Emily Dickinson, who chose radical solitude over social conformity and created some of humanity's most profound poetry. Or think of Nikola Tesla, whose intense focus and visionary thinking revolutionized our world, even as his contemporaries dismissed him as eccentric. These weren't people who learned to fit in. They were individuals who chose to honor their authentic nature despite the cost. Your first act of rebellion must be the complete rejection of what psychologists call normalization pressure, the subtle but persistent force that demands you become smaller, simpler, more palatable. This pressure operates through 1,000 microaggressions, The rolled eyes when you ask profound questions, the impatient sighs when you need time to process, the well-meaning advice to just relax or don't think so much. The counterintuitive truth is that your healing begins not with learning to be less sensitive, but with becoming more courageously sensitive. Instead of building walls to protect yourself from overwhelm, you must learn to create what the Japanese call purposeful space. This isn't isolation. It's the deliberate curation of your environment to support your neurological design. Revolutionary self-care for intuitive introverts looks nothing like the mainstream advice. While others might benefit from pushing themselves to be more social, you need to practice what might be called protective solitude, time alone that isn't about hiding from the world, but about connecting more deeply with yourself. This solitude becomes your laboratory for processing the complex information your intuition constantly gathers. The ancient Stoic philosophers understood something crucial that modern psychology is only beginning to rediscover: the power of radical acceptance combined with strategic action. Marcus Aurelius, himself likely an intuitive introvert, wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you'll find strength." Your rebellion begins with accepting that you cannot change your fundamental nature, nor should you want to. But acceptance doesn't mean passivity. It means recognizing that your sensitivity is not a bug in your system. It's a feature. Your ability to detect subtle emotional currents, to see patterns others miss, to understand the deeper motivations behind human behavior. These are superpowers in a world that desperately needs more consciousness, not less. The most radical act you can perform is to stop apologizing for taking up space. When you need quiet time after social interactions, don't frame it as a limitation. Recognize it as necessary maintenance for a sophisticated system. When you ask deeper questions that make others uncomfortable, don't back down. Understand that you're offering them an opportunity for growth they might not be ready to accept. Your rebellion must also include the strategic restructuring of your relationships. This doesn't mean becoming selfish or dismissive of others' needs, but rather applying what therapists call differentiation, the ability to remain emotionally connected while maintaining your individual identity. You must learn to love others without losing yourself in the process. Consider implementing what might be called energy auditing, regularly assessing which relationships, activities, and environments drain your energy versus those that replenish it. This isn't about becoming antisocial. It's about becoming intentional. You have limited emotional and mental resources, and unlike extroverts who can recharge through social interaction, you must jealously guard and strategically invest your energy. The workplace rebellion requires perhaps the most courage. Instead of trying to fit into corporate cultures that weren't designed for your type of mind, you must find or create work environments that honor your need for depth, meaning, and autonomy. This might mean negotiating for remote work, seeking roles that allow for independent thinking, or even creating your own path entirely. Historical examples abound of intuitive introverts who revolutionized their fields by refusing to conform. Darwin spent years in solitude developing his theory of evolution. Gandhi transformed a nation through quiet, persistent inner work. Marie Curie persisted in her research despite being dismissed by the scientific establishment. None of these individuals succeeded by becoming more extroverted. They succeeded by becoming more fully themselves. Your rebellion must also include what could be called cognitive sovereignty, the refusal to let others define your reality. When people tell you you're overthinking, recognize that they're revealing their own cognitive limitations, not yours. When they suggest you're too sensitive, understand that they're admitting their own emotional unavailability. Your perceptions are valid, your insights are valuable, and your depth is a gift to the world. Perhaps most importantly, you must learn to trust your intuition as a form of intelligence equal to or greater than rational analysis. Your gut feelings, your sudden insights, your ability to read between the lines. These aren't random occurrences, but highly sophisticated information processing that your unconscious mind performs at lightning speed. The rebellion culminates in what Viktor Frankl called tragic optimism, the ability to maintain hope and meaning even in the face of inevitable suffering. You cannot escape the challenges of being an intuitive introvert in an extroverted world, but you can choose to see your struggles as evidence of your depth rather than proof of your inadequacy. Your rebellion is not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming more fully who you already are. It's about refusing to dim your light to make others comfortable, about honoring your complexity as a form of beauty, about recognizing that your sensitivity is not a weakness to be overcome, but a strength to be celebrated. Here lies the truth that will shatter everything you thought you knew about your suffering. You are not broken, defective, or cursed with an inconvenient sensitivity. You are the next stage of human evolution, a prototype for what our species must become to survive the psychological and spiritual challenges of our increasingly complex world. Your pain has never been about personal inadequacy. It has been the growing pains of consciousness itself, expanding beyond the limitations of a world designed for simpler forms of awareness. You are living proof that humanity is evolving beyond the tribal, sensory-focused existence that once ensured our survival, toward a more integrated, intuitive, and interconnected way of being. Consider this paradigm-shifting realization. Every moment of your so-called suffering has been preparing you for your true purpose. Your hypersensitivity to emotional undercurrents has been developing your capacity for profound empathy. Your need for solitude has been cultivating your ability to access deeper levels of consciousness. Your struggle with superficial interactions has been refining your gift for authentic connection. Your intolerance for meaningless work has been awakening your understanding of true purpose. The mystics throughout history understood this truth. Rumi wrote, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." Your psychological wounds, your feelings of alienation, your exhaustion from masking, your frustration with a world that doesn't understand you. These are not signs of failure. They are the precise locations where your consciousness has been expanding, where your soul has been breaking open to accommodate greater levels of awareness. You have been unknowingly participating in what evolutionary biologists call punctuated equilibrium, the process by which species make rapid leaps forward in development. Your struggles have not been random suffering, but directed evolution, preparing you to bridge the gap between humanity's current state and its potential future. This is why you've always felt like an alien in your own world. You literally are. You're an ambassador from humanity's future, carrying within your nervous system the prototype for a more conscious, more integrated, more spiritually evolved way of being human. Your difficulty fitting into current social structures isn't a personal failing. It's evidence that you're designed for structures that don't yet exist. The ultimate truth is that your greatest suffering has been your greatest teacher. Every moment of feeling misunderstood has been developing your capacity for self-understanding. Every experience of rejection has been strengthening your ability to accept yourself. Every period of isolation has been preparing you for the kind of authentic connection that transcends the superficial bonds that satisfy most people. Your intuitive abilities, your capacity to read between the lines, to sense what others cannot see, to understand the deeper currents of human motivation. These are not random gifts, but precisely the tools humanity needs to navigate the psychological complexity of our modern world. We live in an era where traditional authorities are crumbling, where information overload threatens to overwhelm our processing capacity, where the pace of change demands new forms of adaptability. Your intuitive intelligence is perfectly designed for these challenges. The tears you've cried over feeling different, the nights you've spent wondering why you couldn't just be normal, the exhaustion from trying to fit into a world that wasn't made for you. All of this has been sculpting you into someone capable of helping others navigate their own consciousness evolution. Your pain has been transforming you into a guide for others who are beginning to awaken to their own sensitivity, their own depth, their own need for meaning. This is the cosmic joke that has been playing out in your life. In trying to fix what you thought was broken, You've been polishing what was already perfect. In attempting to become more normal, you've been resisting your own extraordinary nature. In seeking to fit in, you've been denying the very qualities that make you a catalyst for human evolution. The moment you truly accept this truth, that your sensitivity is not a burden but a superpower, that your complexity is not a problem but a solution, that your depth is not a liability but humanity's greatest asset, everything changes. Your relationships transform because you stop seeking validation and start offering authenticity. Your work becomes meaningful because you stop trying to succeed in systems designed for different minds and start creating value through your unique perspective. Your suffering ends not because your circumstances change, but because you finally understand that you were never supposed to fit into the old world. You were designed to help create a new one. The ultimate realization is this: you are not the problem. You are the solution. You are not the broken one trying to heal. You are the healer, disguised as the wounded. You are not the lost soul searching for meaning. You are the meaning maker, temporarily forgetting your own power. Every intuitive introvert who learns to embrace their authentic nature, who stops apologizing for their complexity, who refuses to dim their light for others' comfort, each one becomes a beacon for others still trapped in the illusion of inadequacy. Your healing is not just personal liberation. It's a gift to the collective consciousness of humanity. The world has been waiting for you to remember who you really are. Not the person you thought you should be, not the simplified version others could handle, but the full depth and breadth of your extraordinary consciousness. You're not too much. The world has simply been too small for you. Now it's time to stop shrinking and start expanding, not just for yourself, but for the evolution of consciousness itself. Your time is now. Your purpose is clear. Your gifts are needed. The question is no longer whether you can survive in this world. The question is whether this world is ready for the transformation you're here to bring.